Hello, my fellow Canadians. So, I did a couple of streams 2 days ago when our Prime Minister here in Canada, yes, because I am Canadian, French Canadian in fact, decided to announce his resignation, which is, by the way, not immediate. He will stay on as Prime Minister, as leader of the Liberal Party, up until a new leader is elected, I guess. Not elected in the sense that we're going to an election, meaning that the party members within the Liberal Party will themselves elect their new leader, which is not currently a good thing. It's putting Canada in a very bad situation currently, and I'll get to a couple of, not examples, but I'll explain how things are not good for us currently. Basically, what he also did with his announcement is he decided to prorogue our government, meaning that Parliament does not sit. The opposition cannot ask questions of what the government is doing with taxpayers' money, cannot criticize anything, cannot get into a discussion, because you may or may not be aware of this, but President-elect Trump has mentioned that on his first day in office, coming soon, he will put in place a tariff of 25% for imports, exports, trading with Canada. Meaning that everything that we import from the US will now cost 25% more. And in theory, while Canadians should be our government should be, sitting at the table discussing ways to avoid this. What does the US want, and how can we work together to achieve a mutual beneficial role? So, unfortunately, yeah. That's not happening in the sense that Parliament is not sitting, so we don't exactly know what is happening. Canada is not negotiating from a point of view of, how can I say, we're not in a good place because our leader is stepping down and the government is not sitting. So it's kind of from a point of weakness rather than from a point of strength that Trump is coming in with a 4-year strong mandate, and Justin he's just thinking of himself. So basically, he doesn't want to go in open parliament because he knows that he will be facing confidence votes that could bring down the government and force us into an election. He wants to avoid this. And it's, I would say, a lame and a cheap way of doing this. I don't necessarily agree with how he is going about doing this. And yeah, it's all foobar because in theory, he's not allowed to do it if it's to put his party's agenda before the taxpayers and, us. Parliament is supposed to work for Canadians, and he just put that on pause, hits the reset button, puts it on the back burner for now, while his party you know, is addressing internal issues. Honestly, as a Canadian, that's not my problem that you can't get your house into order. There's a very simple way of dealing with this, and that is to go to an election. So, and the fact that he prorogues for the reason that he wants to put his party first makes it that he is trying to avoid a non-confidence vote, trying to avoid the responsibility that his government has towards the citizens, to forward his Liberal Party's agenda, which is borderline illegal. Now, this will be something that will have to go through courts. And currently, there are an organization and a couple of here. It mentions that there's two men that are challenging the legality of this. You do have the right to prorogue in certain circumstances. The term prorogue and all of this was created before we had phones, before we had airplanes, before all of this. Sometimes members would have to travel by train or by bus or whatever to get to Ottawa. And therefore, we had to pause certain things to allow everybody, because after all the ministers represent their constituents that are across the country. So the ministers and the elected officials need to travel from where they live, where they represent the people, and to go to Ottawa. So prorogation was meant as a stopgap measure between people having to travel and get to Ottawa and being able to function as a government. But over the past, I would say, 20 years, it's been used as a ploy, not that often, but there's three possible events that prorogation was kind of like, well, I don't think this is what this was for, and it's been used in a way to avoid accountability. Let's say you have to, the government has to put forward some papers of what they're doing, and then they refuse to do it, and it's been judged that no, they have to do this. One way to get around doing this would be to prorogue and to hit the reset button and put everything on pause, which is pretty iffy. That's not what prorogation was meant for, but lately that's how it's being used. So the fact that even our prime minister is saying in front of everybody that admits a vote of non-confidence that would bring down his government and force an election to favor his party and getting his house in order and all of that, he admits it. So I'll just put a short video of him here admitting to this.
In this country, and there is always going to be the challenge of having a leadership race while a parliament would face confidence votes in the course of delivering supply to the government. In 2000.
So as you saw there, he admits that facing a vote of non-confidence. So basically, he doesn't want to be held accountable to Canadians, to the taxpayers. He is choosing to use prorogation to avoid a non-confidence vote that would break down the government so that his party, he can step down and they can find a new leader. So like I said, I mentioned a little bit why prorogation came into existence. And lately, it's been used in a way to circumvent accountability, which is not the primary function of that function. So, yeah. Also, he goes on to mention, I do have a couple of other clips here, where in the past he says, no, you can't use prorogation to, avoid accountability. And then he says later on, well, we prorogue, but we're coming back when we were supposed to come back anyways. But we just want to reset everything. And this time around, he's like, well, it's only going to be in March. Actually, it's the 24th of March. So that's still like 2.5 months away, 3 months. And the way that the Canadian politics work here, by March 31st, you have to pass kind of a mini budget or a budget or something to allow money to flow to the government and for it to be able to function. After prorogation, also, you need a speech from the throne that is, by default, a vote of confidence. So, in theory, when we do come back, there should be a vote at that point, which would make it possible to bring down the government. But, again, and I don't think this is a giant leap of fantasy, I think that if they haven't found a leader yet, if they're just coming in to pass a certain budget to allow government to function, to have the funds to be able to function, and then turn around immediately and then ask for another prorogation, bypassing the throne speech and bypassing a vote of confidence. And yeah, so that's also something that could happen. But I'll put up another video here. Well, it's the same video. It's just that I cut certain things and put them back together here. So I'll let this video play out, where he mentions that in the past he was against it. Then what he did was okay-ish because of this. And now he's doing the exact same thing that he used to say was not right. So it's not right when other people do it, but it's okay if he does it because he thinks he is God's gift to Canadians. So let's play this here.
8, the Governor General correctly concluded that because the very last times in the previous weeks that the confidence of the House had been tested, it had passed that confidence test, Stephen Harper continued to have the confidence of the House. And it actually would bear out because as soon as they came back from the prorogation, Stephen Harper won a confidence vote once again. So a political document or political speeches doesn't carry the kind of weight that winning a confidence vote means. But this prorogation will take us only into March.
The party platform in 2015 said it wouldn't use prorogation as a political tactic. There are several committees investigating you right now, and those efforts will be shut down as a result of your move today. How can you have said that in 2015 and do this now?
4 years ago.
Stephen Harper and the Conservatives prorogued Parliament in order to shut it down and avoid a confidence vote. We are proroguing Parliament to bring it back on exactly the same week it was supposed to come back anyway and force a confidence vote. We are taking a moment to recognize that the throne speech we delivered 8 months ago had no mention of COVID-19, had no conception of the reality we find ourselves in right now. We need to reset the approach of this government for a recovery, to build back better and gain the we are doing, which is 2008, the Governor General correctly concluded that because the very last times in the previous weeks that the confidence of the House had
So
been
you can see the
tested,
contrast here, what he was saying back
it had
then and
passed
what
that
he's
confidence
saying now.
test. Stephen Harper continued to have the confidence of the House, and it actually would bear out because as soon as they came back from the prorogation, Stephen Harper won a confidence vote once again. Stephen Harper and the Conservatives prorogued Parliament in order to shut it down and avoid a confidence vote. In 2008, the Governor General correctly prorogued Parliament in order to shut it down and avoid a confidence vote.
So basically, that is it, folks. He admits that, when other people are doing it, it's wrong. When he's doing it, it's okay. That he even admits that it is putting his party first before Canadians. And the timing of it, if everything was rose and happy and easygoing, but with the incoming President Trump-elect putting tariffs, that is gonna skyrocket the price of everything in Canada by 25%. And as you all know, prices that usually go up never come back. Even if we resolve this, they will never come back to what they were before the increase, right? So, Canada is facing a crisis on all fronts, whether it be immigration, our borders, our military, our medical system, jobs, unemployment, food banks, crime. Amidst all of this going on in the world, he doesn't care. He puts government doesn't need to function. Canadians do not need a functioning government. What he needs to do is take a vacation, get paid for that vacation, while the Liberal Party sorts itself out. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that this should be happening. I hope that this ends up in court quickly. I do hope that the message gets out there and that the courts and the judges declare this illegal and that everybody, the government, can get back to work. Even if we need to have an election, that again will pause everything while we sort it out. But accountability to people, to the taxpayers. He's a minority government trying to use every trick in the book to stay in power. And that's just not right. Let the Canadians decide. It's our taxpayers' money that he's been involved in scandal over scandal over scandal. We are facing multiple crises and our government needs to get to work. And man, it's a really bad situation. As a Canadian, as a French Canadian even, it's not a good place to be in. Justin Trudeau is making every argument for people to invalidate that democracy works. He is proving that democracy does not work. It will work eventually, but Canadians have been wanting an election for a year now, and I'm not going to talk about the leader of the NDP here and his role in all of this, because basically he's been supporting this government, minority government, basically just to get his pension. Now that he got his pension while he's getting his pension, now he wants to bring down the government. But everything they've been doing for the past year has been to line their pockets and to find ways of staying in power, even though people don't want them in power. The Liberals are currently at 16% and dropping. Of the popular vote, 16%. They have never been this low in all of the Liberal Party's history. And 82% want an election and want to put the Conservatives in power. Not because necessarily you prefer a Conservative Party, but currently the Conservative Party has the, I would say, common sense approach to balancing books. I'm not saying they're accountants, but they are putting the budget first. If we have money to spend, we'll spend it. If we don't have to, we will need to find ways to save money. People are afraid of cuts. I just think that our current government is pouring money instead of putting it in the military, instead of putting it in Medicare, instead of putting it in law enforcement, instead of building more jails and more prisons. What they are doing is they are funding programs across the world. One of these programs is transgender in the military in Africa, in certain African countries. I mean, really? Why does Canada need to put millions and billions of dollars to know how a transgender feels being in the military of, let's say, Congo? It's maybe not that. It's just an example I'm taking out of here. Don't take my word for it. But this is where we are putting money. This is where Canada is spending money. So even though people are afraid that the Conservatives will cut pensions and all that, which they won't do. In fact, they might actually have to boost them to help throughout this hard economic times, but they will be cutting programs that make no sense. Putting tampons in men's bathrooms is a waste of money. It's a waste of a study. It's a waste of a committee. That's where they will be cutting, trying to balance the books. If the Liberals can find somebody to bring them back to the center, because they are so far left, it's not even funny. But if the Liberal Party could come back to the center and find some people that can balance books, then people would be voting for Liberals again. So people are not necessarily voting Conservative because that's their party. It's just, I wouldn't even say it's the lesser of two evils, because Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative parties do have their head on their shoulders currently. They have been criticizing, looking, and they don't only criticize the government in committee, they're asking them, well, should it be better if we did this instead of this? And the government doubles down on why it's important to put tampons in men's bathrooms. When we're like, well, do we really need this? Couldn't we put money elsewhere? I mean, they're not just criticizing, they're actually giving alternatives to the government, which the government just doubles down on their stupid position. So Canadians have been watching the government, the committees, everything that's been going on. The refusal of the government to be accountable for all the corruption and shenanigans that they've been doing. So, yeah, we need to go to an election we need to put this country back on track. I don't know if you know Kevin O'Leary, but he's been very critical of Justin, but he's explaining point on point on point the GDP, the economy, our exports, our natural resources, everything. He's been explaining everything and why Justin has been each and every time doing the wrong decision on ideology. He thinks that, by giving everybody a flower, we will be a peaceful and fun loving country and everybody will follow suit and we don't need everything else. Well, people can't eat flowers, right? Everybody needs to work, everybody needs to contribute. Things don't just magically happen because you want it so. So, yes, Trudeau has been the idiot king, and we need to go back to a government that works for the people. Hopefully, that's what's going to happen with the Conservatives. Hopefully, we go into an election. Hopefully, this prorogation is deemed illegal for trying to favor the Liberal Party. And let's get back to work, folks. That's just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments down below or in the chat. And stay tuned for my next stream, folks. Until then, be safe, take care, and thank you for watching.